The thunder of hooves mingled with the crack of a whip as Olivia Cooper urged the team of 6 horses forward through the dusty terrain of eastern Arizona Territory. The year was 1878, and at 26, she was one of the few women stagecoach drivers in the Southwest. The Wells Fargo strongbox beside her contained the payroll for the miners in Silver Creek, and she was already running behind schedule after a delayed start from Holbrook. "Come on, boys," Olivia shouted over the rumble of the coach wheels, her voice barely audible above the storm that threatened on the horizon. Dark clouds gathered in the distance, and the normally scorching summer air carried an ominous chill. She'd hoped to reach Springerville before the weather turned, but fate had other plans. The rain began as a light patter, quickly intensifying into a torrential downpour that obscured the trail ahead. Lightning split the sky, causing the horses to whinny in fear. The muddy road became treacherous, the wheels of the stagecoach slipping in the rapidly forming mire. Olivia's hands tightened on the reins, her knuckles white with strain. She'd driven through storms before, but never one that had materialized so suddenly and with such fury. The lead horses reared as another bolt of lightning struck a nearby tree, sending splinters of wood flying. "Steady," she called, but her command was lost in a deafening crack of thunder. The stagecoach lurched violently as the right front wheel hit a concealed boulder. Olivia felt herself being thrown sideways, the reins slipping from her grasp as the coach tilted precariously. Time seemed to slow as she registered what was happening, the horses breaking free, the coach tipping, her body becoming weightless before the sickening impact with the ground. Pain exploded through her right leg and shoulder as she landed hard in the mud. Through the haze of agony and the curtain of rain, Olivia watched helplessly as the stagecoach rolled onto its side, the wheels still spinning uselessly in the air. The strongbox had been thrown clear, landing several yards away, but her attention was focused on the horses that had broken free and were now galloping away in panic. "No." Olivia struggled to her feet, only to collapse as her right ankle gave way beneath her. The realization hit her as hard as the fall. She was stranded in the middle of nowhere during a violent storm, with a wrecked stagecoach, no horses, and an injured leg. For the first time since taking this job 2 years ago, Olivia felt true fear grip her heart. The rain continued to pour, soaking through her duster and the heavy canvas trousers she wore. Her hat had been lost in the crash, leaving her dark hair plastered to her face. She dragged herself toward the overturned coach, seeking any shelter from the deluge. As the minutes stretched into an hour, Olivia huddled against the underside of the coach, shivering as the temperature dropped. The Wells Fargo strongbox lay nearby, a heavy reminder of her responsibility. She had never failed a delivery before, prided herself on her reliability. Now, she wasn't sure she would even survive the night. The storm eventually abated, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the occasional drip of water and the distant call of a night bird. Darkness had fallen, and with it came a bone-deep cold that seemed to seep into her very marrow. Olivia tried to stand again, gritting her teeth against the pain in her ankle. She needed to find help or at least build a fire. A sound in the distance made her freeze hoofbeats, approaching slowly. Friend or foe, she couldn't tell, but she wasn't defenseless. Olivia reached for the Colt revolver holstered at her hip, drawing it with practiced ease despite her trembling hands. A lantern's glow appeared through the trees, illuminating a lone rider on horseback. As he drew closer, she could make out the silhouette of a tall man atop a muscular chestnut stallion. He reined in about 20 paces from the wreckage, raising the lantern higher. "Hello, the coach," he called, his voice deep and cautious. "Anyone alive in there?" Olivia kept her pistol raised. "That's close enough, mister. State your business." The lantern light shifted as the rider dismounted, revealing a man in his early 30s, broad-shouldered and clad in a rain-slicked duster. His face was partially shadowed by the brim of his hat, but she could see the surprise register when he realized she was a woman. "My name's Preston Callahan," he said, keeping his hands visible. "I own the Double C Ranch about 2 miles east of here. Saw the lightning strike and thought I'd check if anyone needed help." His eyes fell to her injured leg, then to the overturned coach. "Looks like I was right." Olivia hesitated, her pistol still aimed at his chest. Trust didn't come easy in her line of work, especially not to a stranger in the middle of nowhere. "How do I know you're not just after the Wells Fargo box?" A small smile played at the corner of Preston's mouth. "Madam, if I was a bandit, I wouldn't have announced myself with a lantern. And I sure wouldn't be standing here letting you point that Colt at me." He gestured toward her ankle. "That needs tending, and you'll catch your death out here. My ranch is the nearest shelter for miles. You're welcome to keep that pistol trained on me the whole way there if it makes you feel better." The sincerity in his voice and the logic of his argument were persuasive. Besides, Olivia knew she had few options. She lowered the pistol slightly. "I need to secure the strongbox." "It's my responsibility." Preston nodded, approaching slowly. "We'll take it with us. My foreman can ride to Springerville tomorrow to let Wells Fargo know what happened." He knelt beside her, examining her ankle without touching it. "Can you ride?" Olivia winced as she shifted her weight. "I'll have to, won't I? I'll help you up." Preston secured the strongbox to his saddle first, then returned to her side. "May I?" he asked, hands hovering near her waist. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia nodded. His strong hands gripped her waist firmly as he lifted her with surprising gentleness onto his horse. The movement sent a fresh wave of pain through her ankle, but she bit back a cry, determined not to show weakness. Preston mounted behind her, reaching around to take the reins. His chest pressed against her back, warm and solid. "Hold on," he murmured, his breath close to her ear. As they rode through the darkness, Olivia found herself oddly comforted by the stranger's presence. The steady rhythm of the horse's gait and the warmth of another human being gradually eased the worst of her trembling. Still, her thoughts kept returning to the wrecked stagecoach and the horses that had fled. 2 years of building her reputation, proving herself in a man's world, and now this disaster threatened to undo it all. The Double C Ranch emerged from the darkness like an oasis, a sprawling main house with several outbuildings, a corral, and a large barn. Light glowed from the windows, and as they approached, a dog began to bark. "Home sweet home," Preston said, guiding his horse toward the house. "It's not fancy, but it's dry and warm." A middle-aged woman appeared at the door as they arrived, her expression shifting from concern to surprise when she saw Olivia. "Martha," Preston called, dismounting quickly. "We have a guest who needs tending. Stagecoach accident about 2 miles west." Martha's efficient nod spoke of a woman accustomed to emergencies. "Bring her in. I'll get hot water and bandages." Preston reached up for Olivia, who reluctantly allowed herself to be lifted down from the horse. Her injured ankle gave way immediately, forcing her to lean heavily against him. "I've got you," he assured her, sweeping her up into his arms before she could protest. Inside, the ranch house was surprisingly comfortable, worn but clean furniture. A stone fireplace with a crackling fire, and walls adorned with a few simple paintings. Preston carried her to a sofa near the fire and gently set her down. "Martha's the best healer in these parts," he said, stepping back as the older woman returned with a basin of steaming water and clean cloths. She helped raise me after my mother passed, and she's patched up more cowboys than the doctor in Springerville." Martha tusked as she examined Olivia's ankle. "This is a bad sprain, but not broken, thank the Lord. What's your name, dear?" "Olivia Cooper," she replied, wincing as Martha carefully removed her mud-caked boot. "I drive for Wells Fargo, Holbrook to Springerville route." Martha's eyebrows rose slightly, but she made no comment about Olivia's unusual profession. "Well, Miss Cooper, you won't be driving anything for at least a week, maybe 2. This needs rest, cold compresses, and then wrapping." The news hit Olivia like a physical blow. 2 weeks of being unable to work meant 2 weeks without pay, not to mention the damage to her reputation. "I can't stay off the route that long. I have responsibilities." "You have a responsibility to heal properly," Martha said firmly, beginning to clean the mud from Olivia's ankle. "Otherwise, you'll do permanent damage." Preston, who had been standing silently by the fire, spoke up. "I'll ride to Springerville first thing in the morning, let Wells Fargo know what happened. We can recover your coach and horses too." Olivia's pride bristled at the thought of needing so much help, but practicality won out. "Thank you," she said stiffly. "I can pay for your trouble once I get back to work." A small smile touched Preston's lips. "There's no charge for being neighborly, Miss Cooper." After Martha had cleaned, treated, and wrapped her ankle, Preston showed Olivia to a small but comfortable bedroom. "It was my sister's before she married and moved to Tucson," he explained, lighting a lamp on the bedside table. "There's a nightgown in the dresser that should fit you." Left alone, Olivia sank onto the edge of the bed, the events of the day crashing down on her all at once. The crash, the fear, the pain, and now being dependent on strangers, it was all too much. For the first time in years, she allowed herself a moment of weakness, silent tears sliding down her cheeks as she wondered if her independent life as a stagecoach driver was now over before it had truly begun. Morning brought clarity and renewed determination. Olivia awoke to sunlight streaming through curtains and the distant sounds of ranch life, horses nickering, men calling to each other, the clang of tools. Her ankle throbbed dully, but the worst of yesterday's pain had subsided. Using a wooden cane Martha had provided, Olivia made her way slowly to the kitchen, where she found the housekeeper preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Miss Cooper," Martha greeted her with a warm smile. "Preston rode out at first light for Springerville. He should be back by midday with news from Wells Fargo." Olivia nodded, lowering herself carefully into a chair at the kitchen table. "I'm grateful for your hospitality, but I don't want to impose. Perhaps there's a way I could get to town today." Martha placed a cup of strong coffee before her. "Nonsense. That ankle needs rest, and Preston was quite clear that you're to stay until you're properly healed." Her expression softened. "It's no imposition. It's nice having another woman around the place." Throughout the morning, Olivia learned more about her hosts. Martha had worked for the Callahan family for over 20 years, arriving when Preston was just a boy. His father had built the ranch from nothing, expanding it into one of the most successful cattle operations in the territory before his death 5 years ago. Preston had taken over then, just 28 years old but already showing the same determination and business sense as his father. "He works too hard," Martha confided as she kneaded dough for the midday meal. "Up before dawn, often not back until after dark. This ranch is his whole life." Olivia could understand that kind of dedication. Her own path hadn't been easy either. After her parents died of influenza when she was 20, leaving behind only debts, she'd had to find a way to support herself. Most women in her position would have sought marriage or taken jobs as seamstresses or housekeepers. But Olivia had grown up helping her father maintain the wagons in his freight business, and had a natural way with horses. When Wells Fargo had reluctantly given her a chance as a driver 2 years ago, she'd vowed never to give them reason to regret it, until yesterday. Preston returned around noon, as predicted. Olivia was sitting on the front porch, her injured leg propped up on a stool, when he rode in. The sight of her stagecoach horses following behind his own mount brought an unexpected lump to her throat. "You found them," she called as he dismounted. Preston tied his horse to the hitching post and approached the porch. "They didn't go far. Found them grazing about a mile from the crash site." He removed his hat, running a hand through hair the color of sun-bleached wheat. "The coach is another matter. Axle's broken clean through. I've got my men bringing it back here now." "And Wells Fargo?" Olivia asked, dreading the answer. "The station manager in Springerville was mighty relieved to hear you survived. Said to tell you the strongbox is all that matters, and it's safe in town now." Preston leaned against the porch railing. "They've assigned another driver for the route temporarily, but said your job will be waiting when you're healed." Relief washed over Olivia so intensely she nearly forgot the pain in her ankle. "They're not replacing me permanently." "No, madam," Preston said with a smile. "In fact, Mr. Jenkins spoke quite highly of you. Said you're the most reliable driver they've got, man or woman." He paused, studying her with curious gray-blue eyes. "How did you end up driving a stagecoach, if you don't mind my asking? It's not exactly a common profession for a lady." "I'm not exactly a common lady," Olivia replied, a hint of defiance in her tone. Then, seeing no judgment in his expression, only genuine interest, she softened. "My father ran a freight business in Denver. I grew up around wagons and horses. After my parents died, I needed work that paid better than sewing or teaching. Wells Fargo was skeptical at first, but I convinced them to give me a chance." Preston nodded thoughtfully. "Takes courage to forge your own path like that." "My sister was the same way, never content to just do what was expected of a woman. She's a photographer now, traveling all over the territory." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of several ranch hands leading a team of horses pulling the damaged stagecoach. The sight of it, listing badly to one side with its broken axle, sent a fresh wave of disappointment through Olivia. "My men will repair it," Preston said, noting her expression. "We've got a good blacksmith here, and I'm handy with tools myself." "You don't have to do that," Olivia protested. "Wells Fargo will send someone." "Maybe," Preston acknowledged, "but that could take weeks. This way you'll be ready to drive again as soon as that ankle heals." He glanced at the wrapped limb. "Speaking of which, Martha says you're to stay off it as much as possible. Doctor's orders." "Martha isn't a doctor," Olivia pointed out. "No, but Dr. Collins from town agrees with her assessment. I spoke to him in Springerville." Preston's expression grew serious. "Miss Cooper, I understand your desire to get back to work, but pushing yourself too soon will only delay your recovery." The following days settled into an unexpected rhythm. Each morning, Olivia would wake to the sounds of the ranch coming to life. She'd take breakfast with Martha in the kitchen, then make her way to the porch where she could watch the activity in the yard. Preston would often join her for coffee before heading out to his daily tasks, asking about her comfort and reporting on the progress of the stagecoach repairs. Despite her initial resistance to being idle, Olivia found herself gradually relaxing into the peaceful routine of ranch life. Her ankle improved steadily under Martha's care, and by the end of the first week, she could walk short distances without the cane, though Martha still insisted she rest it frequently. On the 8th day of her stay, Preston invited her to join him for a short ride around the property. "You've been cooped up too long," he said over breakfast. "Fresh air and a change of scenery will do you good. We'll take it slow and I'll find you a gentle mount. Martha frowned. That ankle still needs care. We'll be careful, Preston assured her. And it's important for Miss Cooper to regain her confidence. Olivia looked up sharply at his words. She hadn't spoken of her growing anxiety about returning to the driver's seat, the nightmares of crashes and runaway horses that had plagued her sleep. Somehow, Preston had sensed what she herself was reluctant to acknowledge. I'd like that, she said quietly. An hour later, seated on a docile mare named Daisy, Olivia followed Preston along a well-worn trail that wound through the ranch property. The day was pleasantly warm, the sky a brilliant blue unmarred by clouds. For the first time since the accident, she felt a sense of freedom. Your ranch is beautiful, she commented as they rode side by side across a meadow dotted with wildflowers. How many acres do you have? Just over 2,000, Preston replied with pride evident in his voice. My father started with 100 and built it up over 30 years. I've added another 500 since taking over. It's impressive, Olivia said sincerely. You must have a good head for business. Preston shrugged modestly. I just try to make smart decisions. Speaking of which, my blacksmith tells me your stagecoach will be road-worthy by the end of the week. He's fabricated a new axle that's stronger than the original. The news should have pleased her, but instead, Olivia felt a flutter of anxiety in her chest. The prospect of returning to her route of taking the reins again suddenly seemed daunting. Preston must have noticed her hesitation. You know, he said casually, there's no rush. Wells Fargo is managing with the replacement driver, and your ankle could use more time. I can't impose on your hospitality indefinitely, Olivia replied, though the thought of leaving the ranch's safety had become increasingly unsettling. It's no imposition, Preston assured her, guiding his horse closer to hers. In fact, I've enjoyed having you here. His eyes met hers, and something in their depths made her breath catch. It's been a long time since I had someone interesting to talk to over supper. The compliment brought warmth to Olivia's cheeks. Over the past week, their evening conversations had become the highlight of her days. Preston was well-read and thoughtful, with opinions on everything from territorial politics to literature. Unlike many men she'd encountered, he listened to her views with genuine interest, never dismissing them because of her gender. I've enjoyed our conversations too, she admitted. They rode in companionable silence for a while, eventually reaching a ridge that overlooked a valley where Preston's cattle grazed. The vastness of the landscape, the endless sky, and the peaceful scene below combined to create a sense of timelessness that touched something deep within Olivia. My father used to bring me here when I was a boy, Preston said softly. He'd tell me that as long as we respected the land and worked hard, it would provide for us. He turned to her with a small smile. I still come up here when I need to think or make important decisions. And what are you thinking about today? Olivia asked. Preston's gaze was steady. That life has a way of bringing unexpected gifts, even through mishaps like stagecoach crashes. The implication was clear, and Olivia found herself both thrilled and frightened by it. Since her parents' deaths, she'd focused solely on independence and self-reliance. The thought of allowing someone else into her carefully constructed life was terrifying. Yet there was something about Preston Callahan that made her wonder if independence and connection might not be mutually exclusive after all. As they turned their horses to head back to the ranch house, a distant rumble of thunder caused Olivia to stiffen in the saddle. Dark clouds were gathering on the horizon, similar to the day of the accident. Her hands tightened on the reins, her heart beginning to race. It's all right, Preston said gently, noticing her distress. We've plenty of time to get back before the storm hits. But Olivia barely heard him. In her mind, she was back on that muddy road, losing control as lightning struck and the horses panicked. Her breathing became shallow, and a cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Preston was beside her in an instant, his hand covering hers on the reins. "Olivia," he said, using her first name for the first time, "look at me." With effort, she dragged her gaze from the distant storm to his concerned face. "You're safe," he said firmly. "I'm right here with you, and we're going to ride back together nice and easy. Can you do that?" Olivia took a deep, shuddering breath, drawing strength from his calm presence. "Yes," she managed. "I'm sorry, I don't know what. You don't need to apologize," Preston interrupted gently. "What happened to you was frightening. It's natural to have a strong reaction." His hand squeezed hers reassuringly. "The important thing is not to let the fear keep you from doing what you love." As they rode back to the ranch at a steady pace, reaching the stables just as the first drops of rain began to fall, Olivia realized that Preston had articulated exactly what she'd been struggling with: the fear that the crash had changed her, made her less capable, less brave. That evening, as the storm raged outside, Olivia found Preston in his study, working on the ranch ledgers by lamplight. He looked up when she entered, his expression welcoming. "Martha said you wanted to see me," he inquired, setting aside his pen. Olivia nodded, moving closer to his desk. "I wanted to thank you for today, for understanding what I didn't even fully understand myself." Preston rose, coming around the desk to stand before her. "You don't have to thank me for that." "I do," she insisted. "Since the accident, I've been afraid not just of getting back on the driver's seat, but of what it would mean if I couldn't. Being a stagecoach driver isn't just my job, it's—" She paused, searching for the right words. "It's your independence," Preston finished for her. "Your proof that you don't need to rely on anyone else." Olivia looked at him in surprise. "Yes, exactly. I understand that better than you might think," he said, gesturing for her to sit in one of the leather chairs near the fireplace. He took the other, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "After my father died, everyone expected me to sell the ranch. It was too much for a young man to handle alone, they said. But this place was more than property to me. It was my identity, my freedom." "But you kept it," Olivia observed. "I did," Preston agreed, "and there were plenty of times I wondered if I'd made a mistake. The first year was brutal: drought, cattle rustlers, problems with the banking loan." He paused, his gaze distant with memory. "What I learned, though, was that independence doesn't mean refusing help. It means having the strength to accept it when needed, and to offer it when you can." The wisdom in his words resonated deeply with Olivia. Perhaps true strength wasn't in stubborn self-reliance, but in knowing when to stand alone and when to stand with others. "Tomorrow," she said decisively, "I'd like to see the stagecoach, see how the repairs are coming along." Preston's eyes brightened with approval. "First thing after breakfast," he promised. "And if you're feeling up to it, maybe you'd like to handle the reins again, just around the yard at first." The suggestion sent a flutter of both excitement and apprehension through Olivia. "Yes," she said, finding her courage in his confidence. "I'd like that very much." The following morning dawned clear and fresh, the storm having washed the world clean. After breakfast, Preston escorted Olivia to the workshop where her stagecoach was being repaired. The broken axle had been replaced with a sturdier version, the wheels realigned, and the body repainted where it had been scraped in the crash. "It looks better than new," Olivia marveled, running her hand along the smooth wooden side. "Old Joe takes pride in his work," Preston said, nodding toward the grizzled blacksmith who was applying a final coat of varnish to one of the wheel spokes. "He says you'll be the safest driver in the territory with these improvements." Old Joe grunted his agreement. "Reinforce the undercarriage, too. This coach could roll down a mountain and come out whole." Olivia laughed, the sound surprising her. It had been a while since she'd felt light-hearted enough to laugh freely. Let's hope we don't test that theory. Once the coach was wheeled out into the yard, Preston hitched up a team of 4 horses her own from the crash, now fully recovered and calm. "Ready?" he asked, offering her a hand up to the driver's seat. Taking a deep breath, Olivia accepted his assistance and climbed up. The familiar feel of the seat beneath her, the smell of leather and horses, the weight of the reins in her hands, all of it brought back a rush of memories, both good and frightening. For a moment, her hands trembled on the reins. Preston climbed up beside her, his solid presence reassuring. "Just around the yard at first," he reminded her. "No pressure." With a nod, Olivia straightened her shoulders and gave a gentle flick of the reins. The horses responded immediately, moving forward at a walk. The coach rolled smoothly, the new axle creating far less vibration than the old one had. "Good," Preston encouraged as they completed one circuit of the large yard. "Want to try a bit faster?" Olivia nodded, confidence growing with each passing moment. She urged the horses into a trot, adjusting her grip on the reins with practiced ease. The familiar rhythm of hooves and wheels, the connection with the animals, the skill required to control the heavy vehicle, all of it came back to her, not as a source of fear, but as a reminder of her competence. They drove around the ranch yard for nearly an hour, gradually increasing the pace until the horses were moving at a full trot, responding perfectly to Olivia's commands. By the time they brought the coach to a halt near the stables, her face was flushed with exertion and triumph. "You're a natural," Preston said, admiration clear in his voice. "I've seen plenty of drivers who couldn't handle a team half as well as you do." "It felt good," Olivia admitted, looking down at the reins still clasped in her hands. "Better than I expected." She turned to him with a smile that came from deep within. "Thank you for pushing me to try." "You didn't need pushing," Preston countered, "just a reminder of what you already knew." His gaze held hers for a long moment. "You're an extraordinary woman, Olivia Cooper." The warmth in his eyes and the sincerity in his voice stirred something in Olivia that she'd long ago set aside the yearning for connection, for someone who saw her strength as an asset rather than a threat. Before she could respond, however, a ranch hand approached with news that required Preston's attention, breaking the moment. That evening, seated at the dining table with Preston and Martha, Olivia made an announcement. "I've decided I'll return to my route next week," she said. "My ankle is nearly healed and the coach is ready." Martha exchanged a glance with Preston. "Are you certain, dear? There's no need to rush." "I'm certain," Olivia confirmed. "It's time I got back to my life." Preston's expression was difficult to read as he nodded slowly. "Of course. I'll make arrangements to have one of my men escort you and the coach to Springerville." An awkward silence fell over the table, broken only by the clink of silverware against china. Olivia sensed that both Preston and Martha had more they wanted to say, but neither spoke further on the subject. Later, as Olivia prepared for bed, a soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find Martha, holding a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "I thought you might like this for your journey," the older woman said, handing over the package. "It's not much, just some of my lavender rosemary salve for your ankle. Apply it morning and night and it'll help with any lingering pain." Touched by the gesture, Olivia accepted the gift. "Thank you, Martha, for this and for everything else these past 2 weeks. You've been so kind." Martha patted her hand affectionately. "You've been a joy to have here, my dear. The house will seem quiet without you." She hesitated, then added, "Preston will miss you too, you know, more than he's likely to admit." Before Olivia could respond, Martha continued, her voice gentle but direct. I've known that boy since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Just something to consider before you ride away." With those words, Martha bid her good night, leaving Olivia with thoughts that kept her awake long into the night. The idea that Preston might have developed feelings for her wasn't entirely surprising. There had been moments between them, charged with unspoken emotion. What surprised her was how much the thought of leaving him behind disturbed her own peace of mind. The next few days passed in a flurry of activity as preparations were made for Olivia's departure. She insisted on taking shorter practice drives each day, gradually building her confidence back to its former level. Preston accompanied her on these excursions, offering advice on handling the modified coach, but mostly just providing quiet support. On the eve of her departure, Preston invited her to join him for a ride to his favorite spot on the property, a small lake nestled in a grove of cottonwood trees. They tethered their horses in the shade and walked to the water's edge, where a fallen log provided a natural bench. "I wanted to give you something," Preston said, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew a small carved wooden box and handed it to her. "A parting gift." Olivia opened the box to find a silver compass, its face gleaming in the late afternoon sun. "It's beautiful," she murmured, lifting it carefully. "It was my father's," Preston explained. "He always said it would point him home, no matter how far he roamed." His eyes met hers, earnest and clear. "I thought you might find it useful in your travels." The significance of the gift wasn't lost on Olivia. This wasn't a trinket but a family heirloom, something precious and personal. "Preston, I can't accept this. It's too valuable." "Please," he insisted. "I want you to have it." His hand covered hers where she held the compass. "These past 2 weeks have been unexpected. When I found you by that wrecked stagecoach, I was just being a good neighbor. I never imagined." He trailed off, seeming to struggle for words, a rare occurrence for the usually articulate rancher. "I never imagined I'd find myself dreading your departure," he finally continued, "or that I'd be considering ways to convince you to stay." Olivia's heart quickened at his confession. "Preston, I know you value your independence," he hurried on. "I admire that about you. I'm not asking you to give up your life or your work. He took a deep breath. "I just want the chance to see where this might lead, whatever this is between us." The sincerity in his voice, the respect in his eyes, they touched Olivia deeply. Here was a man who understood her need for independence because he shared it, who saw her strength as complementary to his own rather than competing with it. "I've spent so long proving I don't need anyone," she said softly. "I'm not sure I remember how to let someone in." Preston's smile was gentle. "Maybe we could figure it out together, slowly." He gestured toward the compass still in her hand. "That doesn't just point north. It can lead you in any direction, including back here, if you wanted." The implication was clear. He wasn't asking her to choose between her life and him, but offering the possibility of both. The realization was liberating. "What if," Olivia said thoughtfully, "I continued my route, but made the Double C my home base instead of the boarding house in Hallbrook? The Springerville-Hallbrook run passes right by your ranch. I could stop here between trips." Hope brightened Preston's features. "You'd consider that?" "I would," Olivia confirmed, surprising herself with how right the decision felt. "It would mean having a real home again, something I haven't had since my parents died." Preston's hand tightened around hers. "I'd like that very much." As the sun began to set over the lake, casting golden reflections across the still water, Olivia found herself leaning slightly against Preston's shoulder. It was a small gesture, this tentative physical contact, but it represented a monumental shift in her thinking, an acknowledgement that independence and intimacy could coexist, each strengthening rather than diminishing the other. The following morning, Olivia took her place at the reins of the fully repaired stagecoach. Her trunks had been loaded, the horses were fresh and eager, and a small crowd of ranch hands had gathered to see her off. Martha presented her with a basket of food for the journey, while old Joe assured her once more that the coach was sound. Preston stood beside the coach, looking up at her with a mixture of pride and something deeper, something that made Olivia's heart flutter despite her determination to remain composed. "Wells Fargo is expecting you by sundown," he reminded her. "The station manager said they have a special run scheduled for you tomorrow payroll for the Silver Creek mine." Olivia nodded, adjusting her gloves. "I'll be back in 3 days," she said, the promise in her words extending beyond the mere statement of her route schedule. "I'll be waiting," Preston replied simply. With a final nod to the gathered crowd, Olivia flicked the reins and set the coach in motion. As the Double C Ranch receded behind her, she felt not the solitude she'd once cherished, but a new sense of connection that stretched like an invisible thread back to the man who stood watching her departure. The road to Springerville stretched before her, familiar yet somehow different. The landscape that had once seemed merely a backdrop to her journey now felt like a path leading in 2 directions, forward to her duties and back to a place that was becoming home. With the silver compass tucked safely in her pocket and her confidence restored, Olivia Cooper guided the stagecoach toward town, certain for the first time that independence didn't have to mean being alone. Over the next several months, Olivia established a new rhythm to her life. She continued her regular routes for Wells Fargo, earning praise from the company for her reliability and skill. But instead of the lonely existence she'd known before, she now had the Double C to return to between runs, where Preston always welcomed her with warmth and respect. Their relationship deepened gradually, built on shared values and mutual admiration. Preston never asked her to give up driving the stagecoach, understanding that it was integral to her identity. Instead, he took pride in her accomplishments, often meeting her at various stops along her route when ranch business took him to the same towns. By the following spring, Olivia had moved permanently into the main house at the Double C, and on a clear April morning, with Martha and the ranch hands as witnesses, she and Preston exchanged vows beneath the cottonwood trees by the lake. Her wedding gift to him was a silver pocket watch to match his compass, engraved with the words 2 paths, 1 journey. Wells Fargo granted her 2 weeks' leave for a honeymoon, a journey to San Francisco that marked the farthest either of them had ever traveled from Arizona territory. Upon their return, Olivia resumed her driving schedule, now wearing a simple gold band alongside her leather driving gloves. The arrangement raised eyebrows among some in the community who couldn't understand why Preston Callahan would allow his wife to continue such an unladylike profession. But those who knew them understood that their partnership was built on mutual respect, not conventional expectations. As summer turned to fall, Olivia made a discovery that would require another adjustment to their unconventional life. The persistent morning sickness could mean only one thing: a baby was on the way. When she shared the news with Preston, his joy was tempered with concern. "Will you stop driving now?" he asked as they sat together on the porch swing, his hand resting protectively over hers on her still flat stomach. Olivia considered the question carefully. "Not immediately," she decided. "I can continue for a few more months safely, but yes, eventually I'll need to step down, at least temporarily." Preston nodded, understanding as always. "And afterward?" "Afterward," Olivia said, meeting his gaze steadily. "We'll figure it out together, just as we have everything else." The following February, during a rare Arizona snowfall, Olivia gave birth to a son they named James after Preston's father. As she held her newborn with Preston beside her, overcome with emotion, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. A stagecoach crash that had seemed like disaster had instead become the beginning of her greatest adventure, not a solo journey, but one shared with a partner who valued her strength and independence as much as she did herself. The accident hadn't ended her dream. It had expanded it, making room for love and family alongside the freedom she'd always cherished. By the time James was 6 months old, Olivia had worked out a new arrangement with Wells Fargo. She would drive shorter routes, 3 days a week, allowing her to balance motherhood with the work she loved. Martha delighted in caring for the baby during these times, and Preston adjusted his ranch schedule to spend more time with his son when Olivia was on the road. Their life wasn't without challenges. There were still storms that spooked horses, difficult passengers, and the occasional mechanical failure. The ranch faced its own hardships with unpredictable weather and fluctuating cattle prices. But together, Olivia and Preston weathered these trials with the same resilience that had drawn them to each other in the first place. 5 years later, their family expanded again with the arrival of a daughter, Elizabeth, born with her mother's determination and her father's thoughtful nature. By then, Olivia had been promoted to route manager for Wells Fargo in the Eastern Arizona Territory, a position that allowed her to continue working with stagecoaches while spending more time at home. On James's 7th birthday, Preston surprised him with a miniature stagecoach, built to scale and pulled by a pair of gentle ponies. As Olivia watched her son take the reins for the first time, Preston's arm around her waist, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. "He has your touch with the horses," Preston observed, pride evident in his voice. "And your steady nerves," Olivia added, laughing as James navigated a small obstacle course they'd set up in the yard. Later that evening, with the children asleep and the ranch quiet under a blanket of stars, Olivia and Preston sat on the porch as they often did, her head resting against his shoulder. "I was thinking about that compass today," she said softly. "The one you gave me before I left the first time." Preston's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long familiarity. "Oh, you said it would point me home, no matter how far I roamed." Olivia turned to look at him, the years having only deepened her appreciation for this man who'd helped her find her confidence again and so much more. "You were right." Preston's kiss was gentle, a testament to the enduring love that had grown between them. "Home isn't just a place," he murmured against her lips. "It's wherever we're together." As the years passed, the legend of Olivia Cooper Callahan, the woman who drove stagecoaches through the wildest parts of Arizona Territory, became part of local folklore. Children in Springerville would run alongside her coach when she came to town, and young girls especially would watch with admiration as she handled the reins with expert precision. But to those who knew her best, her husband, her children, and eventually her grandchildren, Olivia was remarkable not just for breaking conventions, but for finding a way to honor both her independence and her connections to those she loved. The crash that might have ended her dreams had instead revealed a path to a richer life than she could have imagined, one where strength was not diminished by sharing it, but multiplied. And on quiet evenings at the Double C Ranch, long after the children were grown with families of their own, Preston and Olivia would still sit together on the porch, watching the sun set over the land they'd both come to love, their hands clasped together, compass and watch nearby, two independent spirits who had found their truest freedom in each other.